remembers the bear. That is the image people carry around from the Revenant. The sudden violence, the sound of the animal, the way glass hits the ground though the world has decided he should not get up again. It is such a huge scene that it almost swallows the movie in memory. But the strange thing is, the bear is not really the wound the story keeps returning to. The bear destroys his body. It turns every breath into work. It makes survival look impossible before the real story has even begun. But after that, the film does something colder. It leaves him alive. And that is where The Revenant becomes more uncomfortable than a normal survival movie. Because Glass is not crawling back toward comfort. He is not trying to return to some clean version of home. The person who gave his survival meaning is gone. His son is murdered in front of him, and Glass can do almost nothing. He cannot stand. He cannot shout. He cannot protect the one thing in this world that still made him human. That is why the movie feels so haunted. It is not asking the simple question, can this man survive? It is asking something quieter and harder. What is left of a person when survival continues after meaning has collapsed? For an American audience, that question hits a familiar nerve. So many survival stories are built around grit, self-reliance, endurance. The idea that if someone can just keep moving, that movement itself becomes proof of strength. The Revenant uses that myth, but it does not let it stay heroic. Glass is strong, yes, but he is not glowing with inspiration. He looks broken. He looks dragged forward by something that might not be hope at all. The title already tells us something. A revenant is a person who comes back, someone returned from death. And Glass really does look like that. He is buried before he is finished. He is treated like a body before he has stopped being a man. But coming back from death is not the same as coming back to life. That difference is the emotional center of the film. The famous image is the attack. The deeper image is a father who keeps breathing after the world has removed the reason he wanted to breathe. And once you see the movie that way, the cold, the mud, the forest, the river, even the silence all start to feel different. They are not just obstacles. They are the shape of what grief feels like when nobody has the language for it. The Revenant is remembered as a survival story. But underneath that, it may be closer to a ghost story about a man whose body refuses to die, even after the part of him that loved the world has already been taken. That is also why the opening should not rush to explain everything. The film itself makes us feel before it makes us understand. A cold image, a breath, a body in the wilderness, and suddenly the question is not only what happened to him. It is why he still feels unfinished, even when he is technically alive. And because the movie is so physical, that emotional idea never feels abstract. We do not meet grief as a concept. We meet it as a body trying to breathe through torn flesh, as eyes that cannot stop watching, as silence where a scream should be. That is what gives the essay its path. From the famous violence everyone remembers to the quieter wound, the film keeps carrying. The bear attack is nature acting like nature. That sounds strange, because the scene is horrifying. It is brutal, messy, and almost too physical to watch. But the bear does not betray Glass. It does not pretend to be loyal. It does not make a promise and then break it. It attacks because it is protecting its own world. The betrayal after the attack is different. That is human. That requires a choice. Fitzgerald looks at Glass and sees a problem. Not a father. Not a man still inside that ruined body. A problem. A delay. A risk to his own survival and payment. That is what makes him so disturbing. He is not a cartoon villain who loves evil for no reason. He is practical in the ugliest possible way. He is fear and greed speaking with confidence. In a cleaner adventure story, the group would carry the wounded man because that is what loyalty means. The Revenant does not give us that comfort. It asks what happens when the survival instinct becomes so sharp that other people stop looking like people. That is where the American self-reliance myth turns dark. We often celebrate the person who can make it alone. The person who needs nobody. The person who pushes through because nobody is coming to help. But here, nobody coming to help is not inspirational. It is an accusation. Glass is left behind because the group decides his life is too heavy to carry. And then Hawk is killed. That moment changes everything. Without Hawk, Glass's survival is not about returning to family. It is about being forced to outlive family. The film does not need Glass to give us a speech about that. His body cannot produce a speech. He can barely produce sound. But that helplessness is the point. He has to watch the worst thing in his life happen from inside a body that will not obey him. Fitzgerald's betrayal also works because it spreads. Bridger is not Fitzgerald, but he is pulled into the lie. His weakness matters because the movie understands something uncomfortable. Betrayal is not always one grand evil decision. Sometimes it is a chain of smaller cowardices. Someone lies. Someone believes what is easier to believe. Someone looks away because the truth would demand too much. Glass is not only buried in dirt. He is buried under other people's decisions. Under their fear. Under their hurry. Under their need to keep moving without him. That is why this part of the film hurts more than the attack. The bear leaves him wounded, but Fitzgerald and the others leave him alone with the knowledge that his life has been measured and dismissed. The physical wound starts the plot. The human wound gives the plot its anger. So when Glass begins to move again, it is not the clean movement of a hero rising. It is something uglier and more desperate. A body pulling itself out from under the verdict other people gave it. He was supposed to be finished. He was supposed to be quiet. He was supposed to become part of the snow and dirt. But he is still there. And the film lets that fact feel less like triumph and more like disturbance. Because the thing bringing him back is not peace. It is not justice yet. It is the raw refusal to let Fitzgerald's version of the story be the last one. The betrayal also makes the viewer ask a harder question about survival groups. When fear rises, who is still protected by the word us? Glass discovers that he can be useful, respected, and still abandoned the moment his body becomes inconvenient. That is a cruelly modern feeling inside an old frontier story. One of the boldest choices in The Revenant is how little Glass can explain himself. For long stretches, he cannot tell us what he feels. He cannot turn his suffering into a neat line. He cannot make pain sound wise. The movie removes language and lets the body become the script. That is why the slow sections matter. They are not just there to prove how much the actor endured or to make the production feel impressive. They change how we receive the story. Instead of hearing about survival, we are made to sit inside the time of survival. The dragging, the breathing, the small movements that feel impossible. The way a hand in the mud can become a whole sentence. A lot of movies make endurance look clean in retrospect. The hero suffers, but the suffering is shaped into momentum. The Revenant resists that. It makes survival look repetitive, ugly, and almost humiliating. Glass is not framed like a statue. He crawls. He falls. He eats because the body demands it. He drinks because the body demands it. He keeps going in ways that are not noble, only necessary. That is where the film becomes strangely honest about physical pain. Pain does not always make people poetic. Sometimes it makes the world smaller. The next breath, the next patch of ground, the next place to hide from the cold, the next second without dying. And because glass cannot speak much, we start listening to everything else. Breath becomes dialogue. Water becomes threat. Snow becomes pressure. Fire becomes a tiny temporary argument against the world. The sound of a body moving through dirt becomes a kind of narration. This also changes the revenge story. If Glass were able to speak clearly, to declare his purpose, to explain his rage, the movie might become simpler. Instead, revenge is carried inside movement. He does not need to say, "I am coming for Fitzgerald." The way he refuses to stop already says it. But the film never lets that refusal become easy inspiration. There's no clean training montage, no sudden transformation into a flawless avenger. His body remains broken. Every movement reminds us that survival has a cost. The closer he gets to revenge, the more he also looks like a man being consumed by the thing keeping him alive. That is a powerful contradiction. Revenge gives him direction. Grief gives him weight. Pain gives each step a price. And somewhere between those three forces, Glass becomes almost less like a traditional protagonist and more like a moving wound. This is why the movie can feel exhausting in a way that is not accidental. It wants the viewer to feel duration. It wants us to understand that survival is not one dramatic choice. It is 1,000 tiny refusals to stop. Some of those refusals are brave. Some are instinct. Some are rage. Some are simply the body continuing, because bodies can be terrifyingly stubborn. And maybe that is why Glass feels both alive and not fully alive. He is breathing, but the movie keeps asking whether breath alone is enough to call someone returned. He is moving, but the movement is not freedom yet. He is surviving, but survival has not given him back the person he was. The Revenant turns the body into evidence. Evidence of violence. Evidence of grief. Evidence that a person can continue after they have been broken. But it also warns us not to confuse that continuation with healing. Glass's body keeps telling the story because his words cannot. And what the body says is simple. He is still here, but still here is not the same as whole. This is where the performance and the filmmaking meet. The camera does not simply admire suffering from a distance. It stays close enough that every effort feels awkward and heavy. That closeness keeps the body from becoming a symbol too quickly. Before Glass means anything, he has to hurt. The landscapes in The Revenant are beautiful in a way that almost feels wrong. The snow, the river, the trees, the cold blue light, the huge empty spaces. So many images could be framed like postcards if the movie around them were not so punishing. But the beauty never feels welcoming. That is the trick. Nature in this film is not a comforting escape from human cruelty. It is not a soft wilderness fantasy where a person goes outside and finds themselves. The wilderness here does not help Glass find himself. It strips him down until almost nothing is left except need. For a US audience, that matters because the wilderness holds a special place in American imagination. It can mean freedom, adventure, national parks, hunting, camping, self-testing, escape from modern noise. The Revenant uses that cultural romance, then turns it into exposure. Out here, the land is not impressed by courage. It does not reward purity. It does not care if your story is tragic. That may be why the film's natural light feels so important. The world does not look polished for our comfort. The light often feels like it is fading. The cold feels like it has the stronger argument. Human bodies look temporary inside all that space. Nature is not exactly a villain, because villains make choices. A villain can be blamed. A villain can be confronted. Nature here is more frightening because it is indifferent. The river does not hate glass. The snow does not punish him on purpose. The cold is not trying him to teach him a lesson. It simply exists, and he has to exist against it. That indifference changes the emotional texture of the film. If nature were evil, survival could feel like victory over an enemy. But because nature is indifferent, survival feels smaller and lonelier. Glass is not conquering the wilderness. Most of the time, he is negotiating with it second by second, giving up dignity, comfort, and safety just to keep breathing. Even the moments of shelter feel disturbing. The fire is fragile. The horse carcass is protection and horror at the same time. Water can save him from one danger and nearly kill him in the next. The world never becomes stable. It only offers temporary bargains. That is also why the movie's silence matters. The silence is not empty. It is full of pressure. Wind, water, breath, animal sound, distant movement. The absence of normal human noise makes glass feel even more alone, but it also makes the landscape feel like the largest presence in the story. And this brings us back to grief. When someone is grieving, the world can look strangely beautiful and completely unreachable. The sky can still be there. Trees still move. Rivers still run. Life continues with an indifference that feels almost cruel. The Revenant turns that feeling into landscape. So when the film shows us a gorgeous wide shot, it is not giving us relief. It is reminding us of scale. Glass's pain is enormous to him, and almost invisible to the world around him. That is a hard idea, but it is one of the reasons the film stays with people. It makes survival feel cosmic and tiny at the same time. The wilderness does not care where the glass lives. That is exactly why every breath feels so heavy. He is not protected by meaning. He is not carried by justice. He is just a wounded man inside a beautiful world that will keep being beautiful whether he survives it or not. That is why the landscape should not be treated as simple background footage in the edit. The strongest scenes are the ones where the viewer has time to feel the distance between human desire and the size of the world. Glass wants justice. The land offers weather. He wants meaning. The river keeps moving. Revenant is also a frontier story, but it is not a clean one. It does not treat the frontier like an empty stage where heroic men discover who they are. It looks more like a place already crowded with hunger, trade, fear, theft, grief, and retaliation. That matters for an American reading of the film. The frontier is one of the country's most powerful myths. It is tied to independence, expansion, wilderness, toughness, and the idea that identity can be forged by moving west and surviving what is there. But the Revenant makes that myth feel dirty. The land is not empty. The violence is not simple. The fur trade is not romantic. Everyone is moving through a system built on taking. The trappers want pelts. The French traders want profit. Fitzgerald wants payment and survival. The Arikara search for Powaka, Dadad. Glass wants revenge. Almost every group in the film is chasing something that has been stolen, promised, lost, or bought. That does not make every motive equal, but it does create a world where the frontier is not freedom. It's pressure. This is where the film becomes more interesting than a simple man versus nature story. Glass's suffering is real, but it is not the only suffering in the landscape. If the camera only asked us to care about him, the movie would risk becoming another Western where native pain is background atmosphere. But the presence of Pawaka, Hikuk, and the Arikara surge complicates that. There are other losses moving through this world. Other forms of revenge. Other reasons to distrust the people who call themselves civilized. The film does not solve all of this perfectly. It still centers Glass. It still uses some native characters through his journey. But it gives enough space to suggest that the frontier myth is incomplete when told only from the survivor's point of view. Fitzgerald becomes important here because he feels like the frontier economy reduced to a person. He is not poetic about the land. He does not talk like a dreamer. He thinks in terms of cost, risk, goods, payment, and advantage. He is what happens when survival is separated from conscience. In that sense, he is not only Glass's enemy. He is the logic of the world around them speaking out loud. And Glass is not outside that world either. That is what makes the film more uncomfortable. His grief makes him sympathetic, but he is still moving through a violent system. His personal revenge runs alongside larger histories of extraction and displacement. The movie's power comes from allowing those layers to touch without turning them into a lecture. For a US audience, this is where The Revenant can feel especially relevant. Many older Western stories ask viewers to admire toughness without asking who paid for the myth. This film still admires endurance, but it keeps showing the cost around the edges. The pelts. The raids. The trade. The bodies. The fear. The land treated as resource and battlefield at the same time. So, the frontier here is not a place where America becomes innocent. It is a place where innocence is almost impossible to find. People survive, but survival often means someone else is abandoned, hunted, traded, or erased. That does not make the movie anti-survival. It makes it suspicious of easy survival myths. It asks us to look at the romance of the wilderness and notice the economy underneath it. To look at the lone survivor and notice the communities, histories, and losses surrounding him. The Revenant is strongest when it lets the frontier feel haunted. Not haunted by ghosts in the usual sense, but by everything the old myth tries to leave out. This does not mean the essay has to stop and become a history lesson. The stronger approach is quieter. Notice what the movie keeps placing in the frame. Fur, guns, trade, fear, language barriers, stolen people, and people who call violence practical, because that is easier than calling it violence. Revenge is the engine that keeps Glass moving, but the Revenant never treats it like salvation. That is what makes the final stretch so tense. The story needs revenge because without it, Glass might simply stop. But the movie also keeps warning us that revenge is not the same as peace. This is why Hikuk matters. His presence changes the air around the film. He is not just another person Glass meets on the way to the ending. He carries a different moral rhythm. When the idea appears that revenge belongs to the creator, not to man, it does not erase Glass's pain. It does not make forgiveness easy. It simply places a question beside his rage. If revenge is the only thing keeping you alive, what happens when you reach it? A normal revenge movie often gives the viewer a promise. The hero is wronged. The villain must pay. The final confrontation releases everything that has been building. The audience gets catharsis. The Revenant moves toward that shape, but the closer it gets, the less clean the promise feels. Fitzgerald deserves judgment. The film does not soften him into someone harmless. He killed Hawk. He abandoned Glass. He lied, manipulated, and kept moving as if survival excused everything. So when Glass finally reaches him, the viewer understands the pull of payback. The movie does not ask us to pretend that rage is irrational. It shows exactly why that rage exists. But the final question is not whether Glass has a reason for revenge. He does. The harder question is whether revenge can return what was taken. And of course it cannot. That is the emptiness hiding underneath the whole journey. Killing Fitzgerald cannot bring Hawk back. It cannot unbury Glass. It cannot return the body he had before the bear, the trust he had before Fitzgerald, or the life he had before the film began. Revenge can give the wounded person a direction, but direction is not healing. That may be why the ending feels so strange. Glass does not suddenly become whole. He does not stand over revenge like a man completed. Even when Fitzgerald is delivered to death, the scene feels less like victory than exhaustion. The river becomes a boundary, almost like the film is moving revenge out of Glass's hands and into something colder, older, and less personal. For an American genre audience, that is powerful, because revenge stories are usually built to satisfy. We know the emotional grammar. We expect the final blow to feel like release. But the Revenant gives us a release that feels incomplete. It lets the villain fall, but it does not let grief disappear with him. That is a more honest ending than a triumphant one. Because sometimes anger is useful. Sometimes, it is the only structure strong enough to hold a person upright after loss. But once the anger has done its job, the person is still left with the absence that created it. Glass survives because revenge keeps him moving. But when revenge runs out, he is forced to face the thing movement allowed him to postpone. His son is still gone. His wife is still memory. His body is still wrecked. The wilderness is still silent. The film does not say revenge is meaningless in a simple way. It says revenge can be meaningful and still not be enough. It can be the fire that keeps someone alive through the night, but not the dawn that makes life feel whole again. That is the important tension to keep alive. The film does not shame the audience for wanting Fitzgerald punished. It understands that desire. Then it lets the satisfaction drain out slowly, so we can feel the gap between punishment and restoration. A debt can be paid and still leave the room empty. At the end of The Revenant, the question has changed. At first, we may think we are watching to see whether Glass will live. Then we watch to see whether he will reach Fitzgerald. But after all of that, the film leaves us with a quieter question. What remains of him now? That is why the ending does not feel like a victory lap. It feels like aftermath. Glass has crossed snow, river, forest, hunger, betrayal, and pain. He has returned from the grave in almost every possible sense. But the movie refuses to pretend that returning is the same as being restored. This is where the title becomes more painful. A revenant comes back from death, but the film is not only interested in the miracle of coming back. It is interested in the cost. Glass comes back with wounds, with rage, with memory, with the image of his son, with the ghost of his wife, with the knowledge that survival has carried him beyond the life he was trying to protect. There is something deeply modern in that feeling, even though the story is set on the frontier. People survive things all the time that they do not know how to return from. Loss, betrayal, violence, grief, humiliation, abandonment. From the outside, survival can look like strength. The person is still moving, still breathing, still functioning. But the Revenant understands that movement can hide a kind of spiritual exhaustion. That may be why the film's final mood is so unresolved. It does not hand Glass a speech that explains what he learned. It does not give him a clean future. It leaves him with breath, silence, and the presence of memory. The people he loved are not restored by the journey. The revenge does not rebuild the world. And maybe that is the real reason the bear remains such a strong image. Not because it is the deepest thing in the film, but because it is the easiest wound to understand. A body attacked by an animal is visible. We can point to it. We can say, that is the scene. That is the damage. But the deeper damage is harder to film. How do you show the moment a person loses the reason they were holding on? How do you show a father who survives the impossible and still cannot reach the person he wanted to save? How do you show a man returning from death without making return feel like victory? The Revenant answers with cold, with breath, with mud, with silence, with a face that looks less relieved than emptied. It lets the viewer feel that survival can be both astonishing and devastating at the same time. That is what makes the film more than a harsh wilderness story. It does not simply admire glass for enduring. It asks what endurance costs when it is powered by grief. It takes the American survival myth, the idea of the lone person who refuses to quit, and makes it feel haunted instead of clean. So yes, he survived the bear. He survived the cold. He survived betrayal. He survived the grave that other people tried to leave him in. But by the end, that is not the point we are left with. The point is the silence after survival. The moment when the body is still alive, but the life that body was trying to return to is gone. And maybe that is why the Revenant stays with us. Not because it shows a man beating death, but because it understands that sometimes the hardest part is what comes after. So the final emotion should stay open. Not hopeless exactly, and not healed either. More like the silence after a storm when the damage is visible and the world is still standing. Glass is still standing too, but the movie never confuses that with being saved.